Hey, how's it going? I'm taking a look at your submission. I saw your note about you're just getting into spline, and that's cool. It's always like the least fun. I don't know. For me, mileage may vary by people, but to me, it's like the least fun part because like all the poses, all the strong posing that you had going on is now getting like blended into other stuff. But anyways, taking a look at this, I think there's just areas that you really want to like focus on because it's such a complex thing and there's so much stuff going on. It's really like you gotta work on your timing to get things to be very clear as far as like concepts and beats that we're looking on. So the first one is her like, so the beats, the main beats that like when you're splining that we really want to see is this going up here and grabbing the sword. That's like a major for lack of a better word, like a plot point in in this in this piece. Like that's one of the major things we want the audience to understand. And then this this push here, I'd say this is another like really important thing for the audience to see and understand about like what's happening. And then lastly, this spin and coup de grace is the last thing. So these are like your three big things. So when you're working on splining this and the timing of it, this is where you kind of want to kind of introduce little like kind of moving holds, I guess I would call them, or kind of like beats. It'd probably be best here to try as much as you can to get like this pose like extended up. So maybe I would straighten these arms, even if that means crossing the face. You know what I mean? Because this needs to be like such a clear read that that's what she's doing. And if there's any way to kind of like keep... So, okay, I'm just going to spitball some thoughts. I don't want to blow anything up. So if this feels like I'm blowing it up, you can ignore it. But what I'm loving is this kind of line of action from her, where she's kind of like going up towards the sword, and you get that kind of line of action a lot from like the foot placement here, right? And like getting the arms to go up in this direction. That's kind of what you want to go from, like this to like up in that thing. But that foot starts sliding forward, I think, to accommodate just the spacing and geometry of things. So I'm not sure if there's anything that can be done to emphasize that, but think about that and think about solutions. Again, I don't want to blow everything up by reworking a bunch of these poses, but maybe you can shift the center of gravity, and these are big maybes. Again, I know there's not like a ton of time, but maybe if there's a way to shift that up and get the arms kind of reaching for this sword hand, like that's supposed to be a hand, believe it or not, as early as possible, that might help with all of this, right? And then the catching, when she catches the sword, it could almost like push her center of gravity back, it kind of shows the force that this fellow is bringing at her with that kind of thing. You know what I mean? But anyways, having the hands kind of intercepting the sword. I know in your reference, this guy's arm is in some kind of like defensive blocking position. It's almost like It's almost like, okay, so maybe what's going on in the reference is it feels like, sorry, my thoughts are a little disjointed on this, but this arm here is like taking the force of the sword coming at him and kind of deflecting it over to the side. So instead of the sword cutting down on this old man's head, it's going to pass down like in front of his body, right? So he's like not trying to stop that swinging force from coming at him, but just redirect it down and in front and across his body, right? So instead of like grabbing the sword thing, he's almost like pushing the sword hands to redirect that sword. I don't know how successful that is in the reference, because like, to me the reference feels kind of like dancer-like there's not a lot of real force and impact. Like it feels choreographed, I guess, is how it would be the simple explanation. So that would be maybe another way to go, instead of having it kind of like stopping the forward momentum of the sword, is that it's kind of deflecting the swing. But if you look at the swing of the guy on its own, it's pretty anemic. It's pretty like soft, right? It doesn't look like he's really trying to like, in the reference is what I'm talking about. It looks anemic and soft. It looks like kind of weak. And that, I think, is part of the reason why it betrays the choreograph. So what's my advice? Let me try to summarize this. So I would go two ways. I would go either up and try to grab the sword and halt its advance, you know, gain control of it and maybe stop it kind of up here for just a beat to communicate that, and then she readjusts her feet once the sword is kind of stopped. And I would do this move like really. So the thing about splining and what I'm talking about, these like story points, is those points need to be given like a little slowdown or a little beat, where it can't just like flow through all of this stuff kind of with equal pacing. So it's like bank, you want something going on here to either stop the sword or show that it's being deflected. The deflecting idea is harder because there's kind of two ideas happening at once, where she's deflecting the sword and getting ready to do this trip. Where I kind of feel like if you're holding here just for a beat, you know, and again, I don't know, maybe there's a way to delay this foot coming up, but to kind of get like this line of action where it feels like there's a strong like diagonal here that's like blocking the sword's path from going. I kind of feel like I'm not, what you have is like in between. Anyways, maybe. This is all a bunch of maybes, because again, I know that it's late. And, but anyways, yeah, just try to get a little slowdown here in the timing of things. Just a little slowdown to show that like he can't bring it forward and she's arrested the progress of the sword. I think that's probably the best way to go, rather than doing this like swing down. And then she pivots quickly. I think this can be faster into that move. And by making these transitions like a little faster, that's where you open up a little bit more time to have like these kind of little tiny beats here to like hold the sword. And then she gets into this really quickly, right? And I would say, okay, so I'd say get into this quickly and get this arm straightened fast. That is not the worst hand I've ever drawn. I'm proud of myself. I'm just going to share it with you. All right, so yeah, I would get her into this pose and get that arm out there fast. And this needs to be held just a little bit, like 2-3 frames, maybe even 4. But on this pose, yeah, I think that arm can like, so go from this to this pose like really quickly. So take some frames out of this move. You can always take it out of the middle. Like her foot starts moving, her center of gravity starts moving, and then maybe like frame 28, you know, to 25, 28. What the heck? What's up with these frame numbers? Sorry, that's a 20. I'm blind. And 25. Maybe you could take out like 2 to 3 frames from in there, so it just goes fast into this down position. Maybe even, you know, like we really want to get into this down position, and that it kind of shows that she has control of the sword too, if she does this. And having that arm out, pop out of the silhouette, is really going to attract the audience's attention to that arm. And you have to have it live here for like 2-3 frames. And then that push should be really quick and sharp with her arm. I don't know what the geometry is like here, but if you can go some kind of, we need to see it that it's like pushed back, right? So we want to see it in like perspective, either if it goes down in perspective or whatever, but we really want to feel that pushing of his upper body to be kind of like a sharp shove. And if you, it's probably a good idea to emphasize that with him, his body posture, because maybe you can start, let me switch colors here to something else. Maybe you can start with him like starting to fall backwards from the arm push. You know, we're actually like, we want to see that the torso and head like rotate. Start to like rotate backwards here. You know what I mean? So it looks like her arm is like really shoving his upper torso and changing the upper torso shape. And then I really want to see like the follow through of that push on her arm. Like leave it down. You know what I mean? Like have her kind of do a micro hold here, another pause here as he falls. So he should be like the biggest thing moving at this point, right? So she goes, wah, and pushes him. And she can even stay in this like lowered position. So like hold this kind of pose, the lowered one. And then yeah, have that arm be like, be back. Actually, I keep accidentally shifting. That's a hand in perspective, in theory. Hopefully all that makes sense and it doesn't feel too like, oh my god, this is crazy. Because like all your most of your poses I think are great and are going to last. It's just about getting the timing beats defined. Because right now when I play through it, it feels, and this is really common when you go first to spline, is everything's kind of given a similar pace. You know what I mean? And then, okay, so let me just continue on before I move on to the summarize. So she can be in this lowered pose as he falls down and be kind of holding it. And then as he's like on the ground, kind of like here, that's when maybe she starts moving into this up pose and it goes for the stab. I think the up pose and the stab is all working great. Maybe, you know, now that I'm seeing it splined, it feels like a lot of the motion right here is just isolated to this part of the torso. So maybe there can be like a little more rotation happening out of the lower part of the body, which would mean like if you want to keep this pose, which is great, then in this previous pose, maybe this needs to still be like rotating up a little bit so that we get the whole torso kind of rotating up. I'm sure you can see like what I mean when I'm saying like this part of the body feels kind of locked while this part of the body feels like the thing that's like animating. Yeah, like see if you can bring this foot over here like slightly faster. I think you probably shave a few frames off of that so you can leave it planted here a little bit longer. Like feet don't like to be off the ground and up in the air kind of. So here it starts to like straighten the leg a little bit more until like you kind of are almost out of foot geometry, you know. You can like roll up the heel and stuff, but then it comes over and plants a little bit faster. So take a few frames out of that foot move. Just little things like that. I'm sure you'll find ways to like make it snappier. Then stuff like here. Again, it feels like the bend in the spine is mostly in just this part. So maybe you can find a way to also get the lower part of the spine involved a little bit more. And whether that means here you're going to rotate the spine a little bit more back. So when you go to here, this part of the spine's rotating forward or whatever. And then things like with the head, you know, there's opportunities. Watch the spacing of the head, because like there's some big jumps. Again, I know that you're just getting into spline, so, but like this is a pretty big spacing jump here. And maybe something you can do to kind of like ease that is drag the back of the head a little bit on that move, so that the head is either so the head can either be dragging or leading, right? So if you want to lead it, you could start animating the head forward in this frame, or you can drag it back a little bit in this frame as a way to kind of like get that spacing to be less abrupt as the head like kind of goes down. Yeah, cool. Cool stuff. I know it's a lot, probably what I said is a lot, and it feels maybe like big notes, but it's just trying to like so every shot kind of has like phrasing or like a tempo, you know, like a rhythm to it. So you kind of want to find interesting tempos and rhythms for each one of your shots. And that's gonna, you know, this I feel like is one of the beats, like where she grabs the sword, right? Like that's a bah, and then this step forward, getting that arm out, that's like another beat. And then that push is another beat, and this thing is just like how you finish it. So there's kind of like 4 main beats to this, and it's going to be about like trying to make it not like a rhythmic beat, you know, those 4 beats, but it should be, you know, something kind of a little more like jazzy, or a little more varied, a little more unanticipated. That's what makes shots like super cool. I did a shot of like an acorn bouncing in one of the scratch shorts where, you know, I think it like exemplifies it. So I'll try to remember to bring that in and show it to you. But the idea is that, you know, the less regular these kind of like 4 beats are, if they're kind of like, if they kind of have an interesting tempo or variety to them, then that's really going to make the shot have a lot more appeal, you know. And timing wise, bump, 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 bump. It feels like kind of even right now in the timing. So speed through the transitions and hold a little bit on these important poses and concepts to communicate to your audience. That's kind of like the big takeaway. And make sure that when you kind of hold on these things, that it's like as strong as a pose to communicate the concept as possible. So if this concept is she grabs the sword and stops its forward swing, then we kind of want to hold on it just for a few frames. I mean, it's not like a hold, not like a static. It's going to be like a moving hold, or you're just kind of living within that pose. Yeah. And the same, so I've been totally focused on her and not focused on him at all. But the same kind of is true of him. He goes back into this pose and kind of holds there, and it almost looks like he's kind of like waiting. So this is a great kind of place for him to hold. If you can emphasize this like line of action where he's like kind of going back, maybe. I mean, his head can still be forward, but you know, whatever you can do to like push this pose and the sword and the anticipation of that, right? And maybe that's where he has like a tiny hold, as he's like stepping up, getting ready to slice. Because this feels soft from him, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, oh, maybe if he was a little bit more rotated back in his spine. Red was not a good choice. It was not a good choice for this, but you know what I mean? Like head forward, spine back, that kind of thing. It'll give you some more contrast for when he like starts to move forward with this. And it's like, if you want to keep the idea of the force in him, you know, it may still be a good idea to kind of keep his torso in this kind of pose. you know, like kind of exaggerate this thing so it doesn't feel choreographed. And then she reaches up and stops the sword. I mean, you could even like keep like an inverse spine angle here. He's got such big feet. And that way when she rips the sword down here, if that's faster, it's going to feel less like he's just watching it all happen. You know what I mean? Because right now he feels kind of like a passive observer, which of course is true from the reference, because that guy's just, they're like doing a dance more than like having a fight. So if you want this to feel like a fight, you know, that stuff happening quickly will really help out. And then with this push, you know, you're gonna have to watch the timing of his hands opening, because right now it feels like he's kind of voluntarily letting go. So he should still have like a strong grip on the sword, I think, at this point, just for the storytelling part of it. And then it's only when she pushes him, she kind of like forces his hands to open and dislodge. So maybe even still here, like his hands are like reaching towards the sword as much as he can, even if he's being forced off of it. Like I feel like try to keep his hands on that sword until they almost like slide off the end, or like he runs out of length of his arm to keep hold of those things. And then once he's on the ground, that's great. Like make him land hard and maybe have like a little bounce up and bounce down on his head and on his hands. You know, I think that's just probably like a little, and his feet, you know, should maybe have just a tiny little bit of bounce and settle, just to get that kind of like more legitimized. Looks like it's a hard fall. Right now it feels like kind of like a soft fall, but again, I know it's probably just an artifact from just putting it in the spline. So I'm going to quit telling you things you already know and let you go on with your day. But this is great. So thanks for the submission, and I look forward to seeing it next time. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully those notes don't make your heart sink or anything. Everything's looking really great. But yeah, just think about your phrasing and the tempo and all that stuff. All right. Look forward to your next submission. See you later.